holy trifecta of build engine games is undeniably Duke Nukem 3D, Shadow Warrior, and Blood. Aside from being three of the greatest shooting games of the late 90s, these three titles also had something else in common. They're all full of numerous pop culture references, with references to films being the most common. In Blood, you couldn't finish a single level without coming across countless homages to classic and cult horror films along the way. Usually it was a line from a film like Army of Darkness.
Hey she-bitch, let's go.
On that note, there's a fantastic mod for Blood called Deathwish, which continues this trend. Developed by Dustin and Twilley, it contains 3 brand new episodes, each with 10 levels apiece, and continues Caleb's struggle against the dark god Chernobog, as he moves through levels heavily inspired by films like John Carpenter's Thing, Saw, Alien, and even some based off other video games like Silent Hill 2. Now, I'm not going to talk about the gameplay or the story for Blood. If you want to know what I think about that in any kind of detail, go check out my Blood review. The basic gist is that it's an old school first-person shooter, where you move through somewhat open-ended levels, searching for a series of keys to unlock doors until you find the exit. Deathwish doesn't bring anything new to the table. In fact, it uses this formula in the most derivative way. The only real new addition is that the player can collect tomes in each level, which kind of act like journals or notes that give you hints or a bit of backstory about the game's events. But the real centerpiece to the mod, however, is hands down some of the most brilliant level design I think I've ever seen in a mod, if not a shooting game in general. Every single level is different from the last in theme, layout, and appearance, and considering the limitations of the build engine, this is remarkable stuff. Utilizing things like the destructible environments to great effects just as an example, but even extending it even further using lots of nifty little tricks to create some really amazing and impressive little moments. Like when you walk into a room or through some sort of portal and turn around to unwittingly find yourself in an entirely new area, through to some really dazzling particle and visual effects and just superb lighting throughout. The amount of enemy placements in these levels is way over the top, but in a good way, and that just helps to accentuate the game's tongue-in-cheek tone. I mean, I've lost count of the amount of times that I was confronted with a group of 2 or so dozen zombies just begging for me to throw a dynamite stick at them. It makes me remember just how fun this game can be when the carnage is at an all-time high, and it's at these moments when the game truly lives up to its namesake. Layout and architecture aside, some of the imagery and visuals in certain areas is really impressive. I mean, it's chilling, creative, spooky, and eerie all at the same time. There's things that you've never seen in a build engine game, and this shows an incredible amount of polish. The first episode in the mod is Caleb moving through all these sort of bizarre dimensional rifts, and it easily has some of the more memorable areas. The second episode has something of a sci-fi theme to it, with spaceships and rocket bases forming the backdrop for a few levels. And the third episode again switches things up with a more opened up bush and coastal setting.
Oh, I won.
I don't want to say too much more because I think part of what makes this mod so incredible is coming across all of this stuff that you'll probably never have seen before and experiencing it for yourself. It really is just mind-blowing to think that this was all made by one person. I would even go so far as to say that the level design in this mod is more intricate, varied, and complex than that of any other build engine game potentially ever made. That's a big call, I know. Of course, much like Blood, Deathwish is often a very, very hard game, and it is even more unforgiving than Blood in a lot of ways. This is largely due to the amount of health items in a level, or the lack thereof. There's no instant use medkits in Blood, and you have to rely on something called life essences, which is essentially the beating heart of a fallen enemy that you can grab for a quick 20 health points. Aside from that, you've also got a portable medkit that can heal you for up to 100 points over time when you activate it in your inventory. Now, the dilemma here is that in Deathwish, life essences are practically non-existent and rarely seem to drop from fallen enemies. Also, I think you can count the amount of medkits collected over the entire 3 episodes on one hand. As a result, you kind of have to move very cautiously around levels, checking every single corner to make sure someone doesn't sneak up behind you. But even then, it's still quite a difficult game at times. On the default difficulty setting, there is already an abundance of enemy placements per level, and I can't even imagine trying to finish it on the maximum setting. Is this a bad thing? Well, no, but if you're not used to playing these older type of games, you might find it a bit of a surprise when you're constantly getting killed by even the game's weaker enemies. Veterans of older shooting games, however, will lap this kind of thing up, and it really does make you realize just how softcore FPS games have become nowadays. So let me wrap this all up. It's been 15 years since the original game came out, and still when combined with a fantastic mod like this, it is still great fun getting your hands bloody. If you haven't played the original Blood, then hopefully this video propels you to do so. Aside from that, I don't know what else to say except stop what the hell you're doing and go play Deathwish, like right now. Getting this mod working isn't too tricky, and I'd also suggest getting Blood from goodoldgames.com, which will make sure it runs with the least hiccups.